Welcome back, everybody. I hope Rob was able to answer all your project questions this afternoon, and you had a good lunch. We are here with the beautiful Anne McMills, who, unlike me, is a proper educator, and I'm so excited that she's here at the end of the week so that she can undo all the damage that I have done all week long with everybody putting up with me trying to pretend to be a teacher. But Anne has had a brilliant career to start with, actually being an assistant and associate all over and doing, I'm sure, her own lighting design work, and then is now an educator at San Diego State University, where she teaches. And she also wrote, wait, I've got it here.
Oh, you have a problem.
Lighting Designers Toolkit, written by E McMills. It's a book that you all need to buy for further learning. It has lots of great graphs and charts and everything in it, and all the details and stuff that I, of course, have left out. And Anne has been so generous to give us all 30% discount on the book, which you can see in the Dropbox. In her folder is the code, or on the Expo booth tab, you can go click on her booth, and the link and the code is all in there. But Anne, before we get on to all this business of being an assistant and an associate, tell us where did you get into lighting, and how did you get into Broadway?
Man, it's a bit of a long story, so it's good that we have some time. But thank you, Tim, for having me here. It means a lot, and just continuing the education of assistant associates is so important. And I really think that you're starting a movement here. Like, this is a groundbreaking class happening in, London of all places, which is incredible. So thank you to the ALD for inviting me, and thank you to Rutledge and Focal Press for giving us that discount on the book, which I think is awesome. Yeah, so how I got into lighting, it's funny. It's one of those stories I'm not sure I totally know why, but I've always loved lighting. Like, I don't know, I was born a geek, I guess. Like, I often tell the story of when I was a little girl, I would get my allowance and I would walk to the hardware store that was, a few blocks away, and I would buy table lamps and things for my childhood bedroom. And many of them had like touch dimmers on them, so I could set different dimmer levels. And then what's that?
There's hours of entertainment right there.
Yes. I was like in love with them. And I also bought Christmas lights, like strings of Christmas lights, and I stapled them safely, I hope, to my ceiling in various loops and different strings of them, and they had different effects and things. So when you turned on the light in my childhood bedroom, it was like a circus. So where that started, I'm not really sure. It's kind of funny how you're just like, love something from the beginning, but I have a theory that, like, you just feel light in your cells and in your body, and like, we have electricity in our synapses, right? Like, I'm not a biologist, but that's what I understand, so there's like that. It's sort of an innate human desire or interest, but I think it speaks more to some of us than others, and I feel like I was maybe one of those. Yeah, so that was sort of a thing. And then my mother was very involved in the arts. She took me to Nutcracker when I was 10, at some like community theater or something. That's probably my first memory of a show. But then she was in community theater. She was a cabaret girl. I remember when she was like, I don't know, 40 and I was a little girl or something. So I have pictures of her in garter belts and kind of thing. She was beautiful. She was also in Kismet, which was, a play that I don't think anyone does anymore, but she was the whirling dervish, which was the dancer. So yeah, I think she was involved in community theater. And I remember during cabaret, it was cabaret, she brought me to Loden. And, I'm really kind of a shy person. So I was sort of like at a table, like not sure what to do. And I didn't know anyone, and Mom was there, and she was getting ready to go help the stage crew, like, because it's community theater, like the actors do everything. And so she went to go help the stage crew load in the set, because it was this huge set that was too big for the space, and the transitions were horrendous. Like, it had to turn and like lock into place, and it did that like on every scene. And I remember having an innate sense of like, this is not a good transition, even when I was, when I knew nothing. But it needed a lot of help. And so the person at the table said to me, so what do you want to do? Do you want to go help your mom with the set up there? And I said, no. And they said, no. And I said, I want to do that. And I looked up and there's this tall ladder and somebody like taking down a Fresnel or something like that, which, to a little girl, it was probably like I don't know, like a 12-foot, 15-foot ladder. I don't know. It wasn't very tall. I don't know what that is in meters. Sorry.
Neither do I. Don't worry.
Okay, great. But it was just that sort of like, I want to do that,
So that you were bugged, that you went to school then, you got the bug, you were hooked.
Yeah, I started helping her out, and then it's like once the bug bites. But I remember like kind of doing that, but not understanding necessarily that it was a thing or a job, or it was just something I went and did. It was kind of fun. And then I remember sitting in high school and in some auditorium like thing about classes or something, and this girl walked on stage with a bucket of paint and she started painting, and that's when I remember the real bug, because I was like, I want to do that. How do I do that? I want to be a part of that. This was my freshman year or something, and I saw her on the late bus and I said, how did you get involved? And she was actually really nasty to me.
Oh, no.
And didn't want me to be involved. I was like, okay, so maybe it's me. I don't know, because the boys didn't let girls do lighting in high school. Like, I don't, you'd think I grew up in 1950, but I didn't.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so I was like, all right, what can I do? So they had me sew. So I like sewed a bunch of props, which is hilarious because I'm not a good sewer. I'd never sewed before, but of course they gave me that. So I sewed. And then one night somebody got sick and I got to do follow spot, which was amazing. And I loved it, and I asked if I could keep the script after and like that kind of thing. Like I was so madly in love. And I even screwed up. I remember there was a refrain for a song. So she was supposed to sing, the character was supposed to sing, a second part of the verse. And I turned off the light early, like thinking it was the end of the song. And everybody's like, oh my God, come back on. And I said, no, it'll look like a mistake. This looks like a choice.
Well, you owned it, didn't you?
I did. So she sang the last verse in just the backlight, and it was, I thought, stunning. So then I started, since girls weren't allowed to do lighting in my high school, I started working at the community theater again, running shows, and by that time figured out that, hey, this is a thing and you can do this for your living. And so by the time I was a sophomore in high school, I started looking for colleges that did technical theater, which I learned was technical theater, and went to Millikan University for undergrad, and then was going to take 3 years off. But I got a new professor in my second year who was from New York and really really opened up the world of New York and Broadway and everything to me. And I just was madly in love with that idea of going to work on Broadway. And so I went straight to grad school instead through a sort of mentor of his at Rutgers University, and studied under Mitch Dana. And then Mitch Dana was, pivotal because he would take us to sit behind techs all the time. So that was mostly my grad school experience, was sitting behind techs. So that's where I met Ken Billington for the first time at Radio City, Philip Rosenberg, like all, you name it, like we were there. So that was incredible, and it's sort of like when you're younger, you don't always understand how amazing that is, because tech can get boring, so you're like watching the grass grow sometimes, but just the fact that you're allowed in that building to sit behind people, like I wish I had a little more sense of like how many people in the universe don't get to do that, but I got to do that,
especially at Radio City, right? That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I like didn't respect it or understand it or anything, but like I wish I like really soaked it in. Like I am so lucky right now, and to me, Ken Billington was probably the first designer I met. Like, are you kidding me? Like, let's meet the king first, And
then work your way down.
Yeah, if there's Broadway royalty, like that is it. So, so I did that. I was in grad school for 3 years and got my MFA, which grad school is really hard, and it should be. But then I
ask a question there, actually. So for people at home who haven't done that master's yet, is it something you recommend to your students? Is it like, could you have had a career without it? Or you probably couldn't teach without it, right?
You cannot teach without it, at least in the States. Yeah, there are some programs that let you without an MFA, but that's becoming few and far between.
Yeah.
But yeah, I came out of college with some good knowledge, but there's no way I would have been prepared without grad school,
Right.
you know, because it like heightens you to this professional level. It's a different type of schooling, like very focused, very professional if you go to the right schools, you know, like that kind of work never would have happened. Like I could have come out of college and been a designer at lower level, small off-Broadway, or not off-Broadway, storefront theaters, you know, I don't know that I could have assisted, you know, that kind of thing. Like I was a fine lighting designer and a fine electrician, but grad school just like elevated me, just skyrocketed to the semi-professional level, right? And then you go out in the field and you learn the rest of it. So yeah, I don't think I could have.
Right. Well, then what was after grad school? You probably got a job, right?
I did. I was so lucky. Here's a good part of the story. I went for the Gil Hemsley lighting internship. If you know that internship, it's the best lighting internship in the United States. It's in the name of Gilbert Hemsley, who is like a legendary educator who passed away kind of early. And it's like a 9-month internship. And at that time, it was at the New York City Opera. Now it's at various operas, like including San Francisco Opera. I think it was also at like Baltimore or something this year. Don't quote me on that. Also at ABT, like American Ballet Theater, I think, like all sorts of different incredible places. And you work with incredible designers. So it's like the internship to have. And it's basically like a professional assistantship for 9 months that's paid. And so I was like, I'm going to get that. I'm going to go for this thing. They only pick one person a year, although this year they picked 2. So maybe that'll happen. But I was like, I'm going to get that. That's my dream. And so I went for it and I made the top 6 and I went into New York and I interviewed with everybody. And who was in the room but like Ken Billington, Stan Pressner, Jeff Harris, like these incredible, incredible people. And I knew most of them at the time. And so I felt like I really nailed it. Like they were laughing. We were having like a great interview. They really liked my work, you know, like it was really, really good. And I walked out of there like, yes, I did really well. Thank God, you know, like, oh, this is a good chance. And then they called me like, I don't know, a few days later, a week later or something. And they said that I was overqualified.
Oh my God, no.
And I was like, I can do, no, it's perfect. It's, you know, that kind of thing. Like I was so crushed. I must have cried for 3 weeks. It felt like it. So I was so distraught because that was my future in my vision. You know, I was going to do opera for the rest of my life and starting with the Gil Hemsley. And so I went back to my professor, Mitch Dana. And I said, oh my God, this was it. And I didn't get it. Now what do I do? You know, and I'm crying. And he said, well, have you called everybody on your resume? And I was like, I think so, you know, and he's like, well, go back and look. I was like, all right. You know, so I went back and I looked and I went all the way down to the bottom. And there at Summerstock, 7 years previously, I had worked for Ben Piercy, who, if you know now, Ben Piercy is this incredible projection designer, Tony winning, I think, you know, like incredible, a good friend too. But I didn't know him that well at the time. He was like this scary guy that yelled at me all the time. Like he was really, really tough in Summerstock and he was, you know, taught me a lot. But I called or wrote him a letter, I think, a resume and letter. And he called me a week later and he said, can you come interview? And I was like, oh my God, yes, I can. But here's a lesson learned for everybody. I didn't exactly ask where or what. I was just so in shock that I got a call about an interview. So turns out it was at Ken Billington's office, which I didn't realize. So I like walked into Ken Billington's office and there's Ken Billington, John McKernan, Ben Piercy, Ed McCarthy, and Jim Milkey. Like everyone's there to interview me. And I was like, oh my God, you know, and it turned out it was about an architecture project, which I had never done. So it's like, oh, okay. And they're reviewing my materials, and John McKernan's there looking at my light right. And at the bottom of my light right, where it says your name, it says my professor, Mitch Dana. So he's like, oh, yeah, he totally caught me. He's like, oh, Mitch Dana's copy. And I was like, he lets us use it for school. I'm sorry, So he's like, I'm going to have to give Mitch a call, so I got like Mitch in trouble. So it's like this interview, like, I don't even know how I got the job, but I got the job. And I was at Billington's for 2 years. Wow. Over 2 years, really, but like 2 years officially. So, and it started like I was watering his plants. I was answering his phones. I was making binders. I was ordering office supplies. Like, I loved every second of it. I was reorganizing the bathroom, which was where they kept storage. Stuff like that, because it's New York and it's small. But yeah, that's how I began. And I got that job 4 days before I graduated from grad school. So I felt like the luckiest person in the universe, and still do. And the rest is history. Like, my very first day I was answering the phones, KBA, this is Ann. And this person said, wait, is this Ken Billington's office? And I said, yeah, KBA, this is Ann. And he said, oh, a woman? There's never a woman there, because women are rare in lighting, and were even more then. And there had been a couple of legendary women that had worked at Ken's, but it had been a while. And so I said, yeah, I'm new. This is my first day. And he said, well, we're going to have to look out for you.
Amazing.
And I was like, wow. What's that?
Who was it on the phone? Do you remember?
I don't. And I wish I did. I want to say, I don't know, I won't say, but I have a feeling who it was, but I've never been totally sure, because I was just in shock and new and, didn't know anything.
You don't have to speculate, but that's amazing. Getting there, and that one door shut, but a very exciting window open. So that's awesome. Yeah.
And that, went from there. I worked at Ken's for a couple of years. Then I worked with Brian McDevitt for a couple of years. And in between then it was, all sorts of different people like Jason Lyons and Peter Kazarowski and all sorts of things like that. And then Elaine McCarthy walked into my life. I met her on 2 Billington shows, and she's a projection designer for Wicked and Spam-A-Lot were her 2 big hits at the time. And she offered me to, go to London for 8 weeks. And I said, yes, whatever it is to go to London, I'll do it. So yeah, projection, sure. That's one big light, right? So yeah. I learned projections. I learned projections from her, and I took Wicked and Spam-A-Lot all over the world. And then the plan was always to teach. So I left and went to LA and started teaching at Cal State LA for 5 years. And then I've been at San Diego State for 7 years, starting 7 years now. So so that's a very long answer to your question, I suppose, but that's kind of how it all came to be.
No, it's a great answer to the question, and right on time.
Why, thank you.
So you're in education, and at some point you decide to write this fantastic book all about and an associate. So to do this, you must have obviously thought about this subject a lot more than I have. My camera, my whole monitor's died, by the way.
Yeah, it's blinking out. Yeah, I can see you and hear you right now.
All right. Good. Well, then I'll just pretend like it's going to be okay. So to do all that, now I'm talking to no one. To do all that, then you obviously have to do all your research, and probably way better than I have to put this week together. So I was hoping you could, and for everyone at home who's been through countless hours of lectures and me talking and loads of information, maybe you can help us out and just recap, like, with some top tips, like your big pointers, your like top shopping list of qualities to be a good associate and good assistant on Broadway or in the West End. What's the most important thing?
Absolutely. You and I sort of briefed on this the other day. So I was thinking like, what would my top tips be? And it's so funny to take a, 500-page book and just like boil it down into 10 things. But it can be done. It can be done. I did remember. It's funny because step 2 refer to step 1.
Repeat 9 more times.
It cracks me up. So I would like to think that the book is helpful. And that's why I wrote it. There was not anything like this when I went to school. So just sort of, I wrote it to help other people. And that's always been my goal. And I've been told by people that it has helped. So hopefully it helps some of you if you choose to check it out.
For sure. And is it even worth just even touching on why what's in it for everyone at home to be assistants and associates? For you, certainly. I mean, how did it affect your career moving forward?
Well, it's interesting because it's actually, it says it's the Assistant Lighting Designers Toolkit, but it's actually for more people than just that. And I guess I don't say it enough, but like I've had stage managers read the first couple of chapters and find it applicable and, love it. Associates of other areas like sets and costumes, especially like the first areas about personality and things like that. Like that's really helpful for them. So the paperwork is very specifically lighting, but some of the other areas touch other people, I think. Also, if you're, some people are like, well, you know what? I'm never going to do Broadway, or I'm never going to do West End, or I just want to be a regional designer, or, I love working in my storefront or whatever. Like, even if you aren't going to be an assistant, or you don't want to be an assistant, or you don't have an assistant, like any of that scenario, like I feel like the book helps because, when we're our own designer, we're often our own assistant, depending on the level of the theater, when you're starting out. So it has all the paperwork that will help you as a designer, just to keep yourself in order. Like maybe you're not like Tim, I was telling you the other day, like when I'm my own designer, I'm like the worst assistant ever. Like I am, because there's only so much you can keep up with. But at least I have sort of the templates that I work with. I have, I know what I need done. And yeah, I shortcut that when I'm my own designer because you just don't have enough time to do it all, which is why the assistant exists, right? But it helps you in those ways too. Like it's just, it guides you even as a designer for kind of tips and tricks to help you through your career.
Yeah, and you can see the world as well, right? I'm sure you've traveled a lot, working for other people. I've certainly spent a lot of time in Spain and Germany and South Korea, and China, and all sorts of fun places.
Well, Fix is all over the world soon, right?
Well, let's not talk about that.
Oh, it will. It's already halfway around the world.
Yeah,
I can't wait to see it. Like, get it in Southern California. I need to see it. Yeah, but yeah, What'd you say?
I said, if you'll have us, we'll be there. Not a problem.
Excellent.
So, like one of the things that I really loved reading your book was all those quotes that you pulled from lighting designers about what they thought was like the good characteristics of being an associate. And it's something I've tried to always ask when we do these interviews, like the professional expert associates that we have on. And if you had to, and I'm sure you're going to say this, but so I'm setting you up for it. But if you had to will it down to one thing, what would be the one most common thing that lighting designers say, besides good places to go to eat? What's the common thing, most common thing?
They talk about being likable and a sense of humor. That's what they
personality, right?
Yeah.
Sure. I think it's hands down personality is what you need. Just when you're stuck with someone for 12 hours a day, 15 hours a day for 4 weeks or whatever it is. So. And
2 to 3 meals a day.
For sure.
Yeah, that's number one. Even like Theron Musser has a good quote about that in the book. Like, that's always people mention that because, the paperwork, you can teach the paperwork, but the personality is something that needs to be there first.
Yeah, absolutely. And having done all those interviews and collected all that data from other designers, is there other insight and wisdom that you can give us?
Well, I boiled the tips down to 10, and I was thinking it sort of breaks down into the 2 P's, paperwork and personality.
Right. Right.
The hallmark of being a good assistant is what I was thinking. But my first one was personality, be likable. But that's something, I kind of hate starting with that one, even though that's the number one thing people say, likable, good sense of humor. Because I think people feel insecure, or they feel not threatened, but like worried that they're not that person or whatever. And, chances are you don't need to worry about that. Like, we're not saying you have to be like a comedian, just like be pleasant to be around. Like Tim said, 16 hours a day, eating all the meals together, living out of town together, like, going on excursions together if you're out of town sometimes. That's a lot of time with people. So it just means you need to you know, be friendly, mostly positive, sort of generous of spirit, you know, like don't worry that you weren't, you know, the prom king in high school. Like that's not that kind of likable. Like you just need to be,
that sounds obnoxious.
yeah, I wouldn't want that either. Maybe.
No, but read the New York Times. Have an opinion about the world, you know,
Yeah, just like
read, listen to Fox News, but just have an opinion, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's a big one that people mention. And one of my other ones you just said was I put work on the art of conversation, which I'm actually really terrible at. I'm, you know, like I said, I'm kind of shy. I am talkative when I need to be, like right now, but like, I am, you know, generally I'm sort of quiet, sort of shy. So, but you can work on the art of conversation just like anything else. You know, pay attention to things outside of theater. Like Tim said, read the news or watch the news, read the news, whatever. Be a citizen of the world, like, you know, learn about the social acts that are going on right now and, you know, be willing to discuss them in a sort of respectful way, you know, all that sort of stuff. Like, learn about art and music, like anything outside of theater. Like people really value that because it's something that makes dinner interesting. It distracts your designer from stressing about the show. I've even learned about sports.
Oh my God.
Which is not something I know about. But when I worked for Brian McDevitt, he loves baseball. That's like his big thing. And at dinner breaks, he used to have an office in Midtown, and we would go to his office in Midtown and watch like the baseball season, especially when it was like, oh my God, I'm going to get this wrong. The Red Sox versus the Yankees, I think was like a huge deal. So I learned that it was a huge deal, right? And I would literally watch the news every morning, like for the sports segment, so that I could see what went on that night with baseball. And then I could say to him the next day, man, did you see that pop fly on the blah, blah, blah? Like, I didn't know what I was talking about. But he loved it. You know, he would be like, oh man, I can't believe that play. You know, he'd be way into it. So it was just a way of me trying to reach out to him and relate to him and, you know, distract him from his stressful day. And so sports are not something that I'm into, but it just helped that relationship. So that's an example of, you know, working on your art of conversation.
Yeah, sure.
I'd also say positivity. Like, that's a good one. Positivity is key. Like, don't let your designer go to the dark place. You know, and it doesn't mean like you're being, you're not acknowledging that things are tough or anything, but like, you know, always be willing to bring solutions, or just sometimes you just need to be an ear, you know, and just let them vent or let them talk. And you just have to say, yeah, man, that's really tough. Let's look at that later. Or, you know, whatever it is, like, you know, stay upbeat, keep things light, pun intended, right? Yeah. Just sort of be that person that's like a relief for them, you know, like you're not like, oh man, what are we going to do about that sequence? Like, that's not a good way to handle things. Be like, all right, so that was interesting. Why don't we, you know, look at it again later, or try A, B, and C, or have you thought about the fan out that, you know, haven't used yet? Or, you know, like that kind of thing might not be appropriate conversation in the moment, but over dinner, that might be something that they need to sort of work through, you know, and just being upbeat about things and positive about things is going to help them. And you will get hired again and again if you can be that person that feels like a rock for them and feels like you're going to help them through things and has good ideas, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
What were my other personalities? Oh, be flexible. That's another one I had. You know, be willing to go with the flow, like especially on new musicals. Like anyone who's worked on a new musical, like they'll like take this scene and this song from Act 1 and they'll put it in Act 2 and expect you to do it that night, you know? So, you know, that's, I'm not going to say it's easy for anybody, but like for a lighting console, that's difficult. Like, yeah, you can copy the cues, but then like the moving lights go all over the place. And, you know, there's a lot that can go wrong with cutting and pasting huge segments of cues. And then, you know, the next day, sure enough, they're going to go back to what they had. So even though you like fixed everything, they have to go back. So you as the assistant or associate really need to track like where all this stuff ended up, what day you changed what. Because sometimes it's not the next day. Sometimes it's the next week. And they're like, oh, remember what we did last Tuesday? We're going to do that again, you know, and you've like fixed the whole trickle down effect through the whole show since then. And so it can feel frustrating, but don't let it frustrate you. You know, that's easier said than done, but just breathe, right? And just like get through it.
Yeah. I think one thing I said at the beginning of the week was, like as soon as you get it in your head that your job is just to solve problems, and theater is one big problem, and every day there is going to be a problem, and it always is a problem, like, and that is your job to solve those problems. Then some of the problems are exciting, and it goes back to your point about being positive as well. But like, just walk through that stage door knowing that all these things are problems and they all need solved.
Yeah.
And that's why you're there, and that's why you're getting paid. And that's actually what's kind of the fun part about the job is like, all right, well, that's a train wreck. How are we going to unpick that and make it work?
Yeah, and the more like bouncy you can be about that, like, all right, let's do it, you know, without making your designer feel like you're disrespecting them. Like, you know, all right, let's move on. Okay, let's figure that out. You know, like just keeping things light. Like that's, you know, it's sometimes hard when you're exhausted and it's, you know, week, I mean, 27 of tech, depending on which show you're working on. Like I'm thinking of Spider-Man, right? You know, but that's your job. They hire you to be that person. So always have like a plan B and C in your head. You know, even if it's simple things like, I don't know, like a piece of scenery isn't able to come in and you had all these focus notes on it. Like, all right, well, don't just stop and do nothing. Like think of what you can do. What's plan B? Let's cue some stuff. Let's focus these other lights, whatever it is, you know, just be able to pivot, you know, like don't be so rigid that you can't pivot. That's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And number 5 for personality, I would say another big one people always talk about is knowing when to stay silent. This is a big one. Like some assistants come in and they're younger and they talk all the time, or they feel like they have to talk all the time, or they feel like they need to answer questions or solve things all the time. And it's like, actually let your designer do their work. You know, like you need to do all that stuff in the background, but don't constantly be bugging your designer. I hate using the word bugging because your designers, you know, are respectful of you as well, but like you can disrupt their process if you're talking too much to them.
Don't make it about you.
What's that?
Don't make it about you. Like what's going on is not about you. Just work. You
are a cog in a machine, you know. You're a very important cog, and you know there's no doubt about that. But you are part of the machine. What were you going to say, Jim?
I was just going to say, like, don't expect positive reinforcement. Like, it's not that. That is not the environment. Everyone is there doing a job. No one is getting positive reinforcement. We're just all working as hard as they can.
Yeah, I mean, sure, as the designer, every now and then you'll get a director that says, oh my God, that looks amazing, right? But most of the time, the designer is just doing their work. And if the director says that looks amazing about one cue, like they've won, right? But it's like they're not expecting the director to turn around with every cue and say, good job. You know, in the same way, like you format your paperwork and it looks great. Like you don't expect the designer to be like, great work. You know, if you get that, awesome. But you don't always get that. I've had this guilt where I talk too much, or that's the wrong way of saying that. I asked a question at the wrong time. And I've carried around the guilt, like my designer got upset with me. I carried around the guilt of like, did he not win the Tony because I interrupted his brilliance? You know, that kind of thing. Like, I know that's a little far, but some designers really get in the zone and you don't want to like disrupt that because they get upset. So that was where I learned that lesson.
Good lesson to pass on then.
Yeah. All right. So paperwork. So that was personality. We're doing okay on time, I think.
Yeah, we're doing great.
Oh, great. paperwork. So that was personality. So the 2 P's, the second one is paperwork. I would say, just trying to boil down this book, I was like, all right, what are like the key points that go over all of the paperwork, right? And I would say number 1 is double check everything. You know, like originally I was going to say strive towards perfection, but you know, perfection's not really possible, right? But you can try really hard. Yeah. But, you know, like proofread everything. Like that matters, you know, even emails to your designer, to the team, like don't just send it off without a greeting, without a signature, like, you know, misspellings, like all that stuff is sloppy and it only looks bad on you, you know? Oh gosh, especially when you're applying to work for somebody, you're sending them a cover letter and resume. If there's a typo in a cover letter or resume, like I already know that you're not meticulous, you know? So you're being hired to be meticulous in a job, like show that you are, you know, make sure that there's no mistakes. And this even extends into like social media. Like people don't think about proofreading social media, but you need to make a choice. Like, do you have just a private social media, or do you have a social media that you have invited like designers to be friends, other associates to be friends, right? If you've done that, you are now in a public arena and you now need to consider what you put on social media.
It's now LinkedIn anymore. It's not your Facebook.
Right.
Right? Like, yes, they're all your friends, but they also employ you. So stop posting naked pictures of yourself.
Oh my God. If you do that, no. But, you know, I've had students not understand that, where they, you know, they post some personal thing. It doesn't even have to be that personal. It can be like, here's a bikini picture of how much weight I lost this week. Like, no one needs to see that who's working with you, you know? So like, don't do it. Like, you either make the choice to have personal or not. And, you know, that's a big choice, because the not part of that, you gotta still consider how you're viewed through the eyes of who all your friends are. And you might have, you know, hundreds of friends, thousands of friends. So consider who that is. So that even goes into the double checking proofreading thing.
That's great advice.
Yeah. It's exhausting, right? But it's how it is. Number 2 I thought of was consistency. The easiest way to make a light plot look professional, for example, and I know you've talked about that in this class, is my rules are line weights, font styles, and font sizes. Like if you make choices and create a standard or use somebody's standard, that's the easiest way to produce beautiful paperwork. So don't just like willy-nilly, like a bunch of sizes of fonts, a bunch of different fonts because they look fun. Like you don't care about line weights. Like that's the mark of a non-professional or someone who's not trained, right? Yeah. So line weights, maybe I think I use 4 or 5 different ones. And very specifically, fonts, I use 2, maybe 3 different sizes and only 1 font, right? Except for the title block, which has the logo in it. I mean, the title block is still my font, but the logo is its own thing. So yeah, so that's so easy. I tell my students that right away. I'm like, all right, you know, you're now in grad school. I will teach you this one thing today, and we can graduate you tomorrow because you're going to look like a professional instantly. You know, it's like so easy. But nobody gets that or knows that, you know. So until somebody tells you, like, consistency is the key. You know, some people even use the same, most people use the same font through all of their paperwork. So it looks like one lighting package, which looks very professional, you know? Yeah. Branding, yeah. Which, you know, wasn't a word when I was doing this or starting out, but now it is. So you have to think about kind of your brand and how you present yourself. Sort of going along with that, my next one was templates. Using a template promotes efficiency and speed. So what you should work on, if you don't have them already, is a starting template for your draftings and a starting layout for your light right and things like that. You know, like at San Diego State, I have an entire class dedicated just to making your own templates so that when you go out in the world, you got them made, you know, because I made them while I was working at Billington's, you know. So I had the bonus of like having that training there, which I always call my postgraduate training at Billington U, you know, because he says he went to Musser U. You know, so it's like, I was lucky enough to have that in the professional realm, but it's even better if when you're a student or starting out or a young professional, like if you can create your templates, it just makes you make more money, right? Like if you're getting paid $2,000, you know, and you spend $1,000 of time of that drafting, like if you have a template that cuts that down to 500, you know, you're now making more money. Like think about it kind of as time is money.
Sure. Great advice.
Now I'm talking like an American, right? Like
no, but I mean, especially we earn less over here, so that's even better advice.
Right? It's true.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like you have a starting out point, and all a template is it's just a blank document with all of your preferences set. You know, like if it's a drafting, like your fonts, your line weights, your classes, your layers, like all that stuff is all set. Your title block's ready to go. Like Lightrite, I have a layout. Like any other paperwork I have, it's either, you know, if you're using a program like Spot Track from Rob Halliday, like that's already created for you, that template, right? So that's beautiful. And all you need to do is fill in the stuff, the information. So that's kind of the idea of templates, but it makes you faster, more efficient, and essentially earns you more money. So that's something that's really important. And if you're working for a designer, like you're being an associate working for a designer, make sure you use their preferences and their templates. I have another story of another designer that got upset with me when I was my first off-Broadway show. I was assisting this major designer, and I thought I was being so efficient by alphabetizing his positions in Lightrite. Because I thought, oh, well, shouldn't I alphabetize this? You know, like that. Like I thought I was doing the right thing. I was so not doing the right thing. Like, you know, he had actually already set it up the way he liked it. And then when he was on stage focusing, he preferred to use the instrument schedule. All the booms were like all over the place. Like everything was all over the place. And he was very upset and yelled at me from the stage. And I was very embarrassed, you know, and later he apologized because I was young and, you know, new. But it's things like that. Like if you think you're being like clever about something, which I thought I was, clever's the wrong word. Like I thought I was like doing the right thing. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't like getting yelled at. That's for sure.
I know, I don't. And it does happen time to time, but you know, just because I've used a couple of examples of being yelled at doesn't mean you get yelled at all the time. So don't worry. My next paperwork thought is actually creativity. You know, don't think of shows as cookie cutters because they're not. Consider the paperwork needs of each show to see if unique solutions are needed. For example, you know, is there enough room on the plot to include the booms on the plot, you know, instead of a separate boom plate? Things like that, that's, you know, are efficient. If it's still neat and organized and easily read, maybe that's an answer. Like, you know, if you just have one chandelier, which no Broadway or West End show has just one chandelier, but say you just have one chandelier, like, can that fit on the light plot? You know, you probably don't need a whole other, like, you know, practicals page or deck-elect or anything like that. Like, you know, it's one chandelier. So thinking about efficiency in terms of paperwork, like you might not need all 5 plates of your drafting or whatever. And I know we're talking West End shows, you know, it's just one document. So that's pretty.
Not all West End.
If I think about it, that's efficient.
Yeah, it's efficient,
but not always easily read. So it you know, it's this balance between organized and efficiency. But not every show's a cookie cutter. You know, things like I just received the Hamilton paperwork to look at, and it has a new piece of paperwork called the template orientation, which I've seen Ryan O'Gara do for other shows as well, because Howl is very specific on how the gobos are placed in the fixtures.
His internal reflections gobo is always lands on the deck at the exact same position, isn't it?
Yeah, and like Hamilton has the construction, so it's very specific how it actually they oriented so it sits on the turntable, you know, so that's very specific how it lives in the fixtures. So that's not a type of paperwork that's normal, you know, like out there, like something you always do. But it was a need that needed fulfilling for that show that was recognized by the associate, and so it was created.
And it would have saved lots. I mean, I can give you an example of doing a big Hal Binkley show in Germany where they had that template document that showed where both types of templates should be oriented in source 4, but no one read it or saw it. And when I turned up to focus the show, of course, probably all in all, like it was an extra hour on our focus, the extra 3 minutes per fixture it took to reorient the gobo the right way. So that shit's important.
Easy. I know. I'm surprised that was an hour. Like, just thinking about, they got to pull it out. It's too hot. So they have to make sure they have gloves and they have to turn it. And then sometimes it's not cut right. You know, like, that's a nightmare.
Yeah, we ended up having a whole focus team just working ahead of us just to get the gobos oriented right so we could focus faster.
Oh my goodness. That is a perfect example, Tim, of like a piece of paperwork, like a need that needed fulfilling, and a piece of paperwork that need that happened.
Or all the details on like Ken's light plots, or most people's plots where it shows like on a par can which way the barrel should be rotated. Like that's easier to do on the deck than it is in the air. So that's saves.
Yeah.
When you've got lights focused and extra per light, that's 300 extra minutes, you know?
I know. That's exactly how I think about it. You know, it's all about time. Like, and I try to teach my students that, because when you're in school, it feels like you have all the time in the world. It feels like you have all the free labor in the world, you know, like, and we shouldn't think of it that way. We should think about very specifically time and labor costs, you know, and even if that's in terms of time, like for every extra hour they're hanging lights, they're not doing their homework, which means they're not doing as well in classes. Like that matters, you know? So I will always say to them, how many lights do you have? Okay. You know, the way you estimate the general, at least the Broadway rule you estimate, is a minute a light is what it should take to focus. But if there are many, like for a professional focuser, but if there are many like hard to reach positions, then multiply it by 3 minutes a light. Yeah. So if you've got 300 lights, not counting the moving lights, you know, times whatever, like that's how many hours you have. And often that's more hours than you actually get for focus. So you have to think about that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the longer it takes to focus, the less time you have to write cues on your 600 cue show, you know. Which
raises the stress level of your designer, which makes your life a little less happy. You know, every action has a consequence, and you have to think about what that is. So being creative about your paperwork, if it solves a problem, like, will make your life that much easier. So, you know, if the designer's upset with you and things are going long and you end up being there late, if it's not a union show, you know, then you're spending less time at home with your partner and your cats or whatever, you know, like, you know, there's all these things that add up. So thinking about it that way is really important. And my last one, sorry, Tim, go ahead.
No, I just said that's great.
The audio kind of cuts each other off.
Yeah, there's a delay. It's super annoying.
My last one was, we sort of touched Tim, you sort of touched on it, was just most importantly, have fun. You know, this is sort of a paperwork / personality thing. You know, if we're in this industry and we're not having fun, like, what's the point, right? Like, none of us get paid as much as we should. You know, even like union, you just don't get paid enough because there's just so much work to do. So I always try to make games out of what I have to do because I think that's more fun and like a great attitude to have. For example, like trying to finish all your paperwork notes before you go home at night so that you can come in later the next morning. Right. Again, like actions, consequences. Like, I would rather get up at, you know, 8 a.m. instead of 6 a.m. So let's figure that out. Let's get all our paperwork notes done. Right. So that sounds fun because then I get a reward.
Yeah.
You know?
Put yourself a big breakfast at the hotel buffet or something like that.
Yeah, which you miss if you get up too early. Right? Focus. I love thinking of focus, like conventional focus, kind of like a video game. Like, you know how you have to, like, say you're playing like an old school video game. Like, I'm a huge Mario fan because that's how old I am. But Mario, you have to, like, you know, hit certain things at a certain rate of speed, you know, to complete that level to get to the next level. Like,
hit certain goalposts, right?
Yes. Again, born a nerd, right? Like, that's a nerdy way to think about it. But I love that. I think about, like, I have to hit a certain speed in the focus in order to get these things done, to go to the next electric, which is like the next level or whatever it is, you know, something that makes it kind of fun.
That's great advice. Yeah, you're totally right. No one's making enough money to not have fun doing this. Of course, it'll be stressful, but
Yeah, of course.
You don't have to remember that we love it.
Yeah.
Or if not, you can go work in film and TV and make a lot of money to be stressed out.
And not have fun, believe me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine, but it's not fun like theater. And then my last tip for the fun is once you get to know your designer, wait till you know your designer. But like fun things at the tech table can be fun. Like Ed McCarthy always has this M&M dispenser where it's like a slot machine. You know, you like pull the arm and the M&Ms come out. Like, you know, that's kind of fun. Who sent me? Shoot, I forget. Somebody just sent me a tech table drawing that had a blender on it, and he said like, God, I think it was Tyler Mikulaw's team, maybe Jimmy Lawler. I can't remember. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. But like, there's a blender, and he said to me like, we actually used the blender. We made like tableside guacamole.
What? Hopefully not in a quiet moment of a run through or something.
I'm sure that was at a meal, but like, you know, that's super fun. Or like, you know, it's the holidays and you put tinsel on the monitors or whatever. Like, you know, Gil Hemsley was known for bringing fresh flowers, and he had a toy train that went around the tech table. And I have a picture from Rob Halliday that has a mirror ball at the tech table. Like, and then like Hugh Vanstone is known for like having fun things on his light plot, right? Like, you know,
yes.
I just like his light plot. There's like a picture of the Queen, you know. Hal Bickley always has a dog on his magic sheets. Like,
I think it's his dog, isn't it?
I think so. I actually don't know the full story, but there's always this dog. You know, it's a stress relief for him, I'm sure. You know, I would love to picture my cats on my magic sheet. Like, I'm going to start that, right? So it's okay.
Talking point.
Yeah, right.
Stress relief in the theater, it's all good. Right. Billington used to always have, we'd always have a bowl of candy at the corner of the table. Try to draw people in so they come over and chat to us and stuff like that. Yeah,
that's true. He loves that because then he gets to know the cast better. You know, the director comes over and will like eat chocolate and stress less. You know, like there's all sorts of things you do. So we drive home professional, but like there are times when you're comfortable with people to have some fun. So when you get to that stage, like, embrace it, because you know that's why we're in this business. It's the business of people, and we love being around people. So like, have fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so well put. I love your 2 Ps, Anne. They're so brilliant. I hope they're in your next book.
Well, you helped me think of that the other day, so maybe it will be.
I'm a royalty on that, please. Now, for anyone at home who has been excited and turned on by things, I'm sure that hopefully this week has actually learning all this has hopefully made them ask more questions than they had starting out with. So like, if you were to give us advice on like further learning and where people can go to, where can they go to learn more?
Well, I wanted to recommend Steve Shelley's book, which is A Practical Guide to Stage Lighting. That's a really good one. My favorite part of that book is, I forget which appendix it is, but it has drawings of how systems are generally focused. And it's so useful. Like if you have a box boom, how's it focused? If you have a backlight, how's it focused? You know, so that's not just helpful for budding designers, but also helpful for an assistant or associate to sort of anticipate what their designer might do. Yeah. So that's another book. I often think of that sort of in the same vein as mine, just because it's all about the technical stuff.
And they're so practical, both books. It's great. Often lighting books aren't practical, so it's great.
It's true. And his is a lot about touring, which is really great because he did a lot of touring with dance. I would also mention Mike Wood Lighting, I think is it Mike Wood Lighting? He has MikeWoodLD.com, I think. He has all of these terrific tutorials. I had to click on my tab, so I'm back. That I've been really impressed with. He's not a Broadway guy, but he knows a lot and does a lot. So he had these awesome ones on FileMaker that I haven't listened to, but like there's no other tutorials on FileMaker for lighting designers. So that's incredible. Yeah. There's a podcast I'm part of called Light Talk, which is really kind of cool. I'm like a guest, so I'm not one of the mains on there, but it's 3 guys talking about lighting, and you can write in questions on their Facebook page and they'll answer them for you. So that's pretty cool. And it's anything from technology to design to assisting. And then the last one I just say is Vectorworks. Like their YouTube channel is really awesome. And their knowledge-based videos are really, really useful. So check those out if you have like specific Lightrite question. I'm sorry, Vectorworks questions. Lightrite also has some good videos.
Good. Yeah. Well, fill up your Facebook with Vectorworks. That's what everyone wants. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Anne, for coming and talking to us. It was brilliant. And you're a proper educator, and we're able to summarize far more efficiently than I would have done.
I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure the week has been amazing.